Gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert, for 5 minutes.
Mr. Pichai, appreciate your being here. And I think most all of us agree on both sides. We applaud great work. For example, Steven Spielberg, despite politics, he's provided my family a lot of enjoyment and entertainment. You and your colleagues at Google have created an extraordinary vehicle for searching out things. It's fantastic. And as Mr. Lou, my friend across the aisle, was pointing out, you know, you've got government that's not supposed to interfere in people's civil rights, and then you've got a company, a corporation like Google. My problem is when the government gives its immunity from lawsuits over to a private corporation that's the head of that corporation doesn't even realize that there is political bias run amok in his company. And that's the problem. I don't want to see you overregulated. I don't want to see you regulated. I want to see others come up with brilliant ways, as you, Mr. Brim, and others did, to create something that makes life easier. But a good example, you have a trusted flagger, you'd indicated, called the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center really has stirred up more hate than about any other group I know. They stirred up one guy to the point that he went to the Family Research Council, and I know those people, and they're Christians. And they believe, and I believe, that Christianity is really more based on love than about any other religion in history. God so loved the world, he sent his son so loved the world, he gave his life. And yet they stirred up hate against the Family Research Center, and a guy goes in shooting. You have, let's see, June 18th of this year, Southern Poverty Law Center announced it had reached a settlement with Najib Nawaz and his organization, Gilliam, for falsely labeling them as anti-Muslim hate group. They were wrong. Now, you consider them a trusted flagger, yet they keep creating problems for people that are not haters. And in fact, they had to pay out $3.375 million. My problem is when you put your moniker on them, a trusted flagger, why aren't you paying $3.375 to Mr. Majid Nawaz? That's my problem. You trust people that have stirred up a lot of hate. And another good example, and you're so surrounded by liberality that hates conservatism, hates people that really love our Constitution and the freedoms it's afforded people like you, that you don't even recognize it. It's like a blind man not even knowing what light looks like because you're surrounded by darkness. But if you look, let's see, a good example, after President Trump won, your co-founder, Mr. Brin, said, quote, "Most people here are pretty upset and pretty sad." Now, a lot of us have seen the video. We saw how upset the top people at Google were. And for you to come in here and say there is no political bias in Google tells us you either are being dishonest, I don't want to think that, or you don't have a clue how politically biased Google is. Now, another example is Wikipedia. We do a search, and what comes up as right there is the knowledge panel on the right, and we hopefully will have a screenshot of that. We get Wikipedia. My chief of staff went on, she told me, every night for 2 weeks and put proper, honest information in with proper annotations, and Wikipedia's liberal editors around the world would knock it out every day and instead put up a bunch of garbage like Mark Levin has now been facing. Yet to you, they get a trusted spot. And when Wikipedia slanders or libels someone, and you're the one that has trusted them above any other entity, you ought to be liable. You ought to be liable when the SPLC is liable. You ought to be liable when Wikipedia demeans and uses their political bias. And I hope and encourage you to look around and notice you run off conservatives, you embrace liberals, and it's time Google was actually not immune so that people can hold you accountable and get a little better objectivity. I see my time's run out. I yield back.